she was a billionaire CEO. He was just a quiet mechanic. She laughed and said, "Fix this engine, and I'll marry you." Everyone thought it was just a joke. But what happened next turned that joke into a life-changing promise. This is the true story of how a broken car sparked an unforgettable love. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you," she laughed, never expecting he'd take her seriously. Claire Devereaux didn't believe in wasting time. Not in meetings. Not in relationships. And definitely not when her expensive, perfectly restored 1967 Bentley S1 decided to break down on a hot Thursday afternoon, just 30 minutes before an important investor pitch. Claire, CEO of a billion-dollar automotive tech firm, wasn't used to being delayed by anything. Her calendar was tighter than a drum. Her outfits, sleek, designer, and calculated. And her attitude? Let's just say, she didn't suffer fools gladly. As her car sputtered to a painful stop near the edge of a quiet town, she cursed under her breath and tapped the steering wheel in frustration. No signal. No Uber. And no time to waste. Up ahead, like a scene out of a forgotten movie, stood an old garage, its paint peeling, sign crooked, and windows dusty with years of grime. One look was enough to tell her that it hadn't seen a renovation since the 90s. Maybe longer. But Claire wasn't here to admire architecture. She needed that engine fixed, fast. Kicking open the Bentley's heavy door, she stepped out onto the gravel in 4-inch heels, her tailored red blazer practically glowing under the afternoon sun. Every step echoed with authority. Inside the garage, a couple of mechanics paused mid-task to stare, wiping their hands on greasy rags. One of them, a tall man with calm eyes and sleeves rolled up, walked toward her slowly, wiping sweat from his brow. He wasn't in a rush. He didn't smile. But there was something steady about the way he carried himself. "Something wrong?" he asked, voice smooth and quiet. Claire folded her arms, irritated and slightly amused. "What do you think?" The man looked over her shoulder at the Bentley, now hissing and settling into silence like a beast finally tamed. "I can take a look," he said. Claire blinked. "No, ma'am?" "No, sure, let me call someone." Just straight-up confidence, and not the arrogant kind she was used to. It intrigued her, a little. She studied the garage again. It was old, yes. But not disorganized. Tools were in place. The floor, while dusty, wasn't chaotic. And the men working seemed focused. Quiet. Hardworking. She arched an eyebrow, stepping aside with a flick of her wrist. "Be my guest." As the man approached the car, Claire couldn't help herself. A sarcastic grin curled on her lips. "Tell you what," she said loud enough for everyone in earshot, "fix this engine, and I'll marry you." The shop went dead silent. A young mechanic holding a wrench froze midair. Another dropped a socket. Claire's laugh echoed through the space. She didn't mean it. Obviously. It was just her way of breaking the ice, or perhaps teasing the absurdity of the moment. But the man didn't laugh. He didn't flinch. Didn't smirk. Didn't even look at her twice. He wiped his hands once more and looked her straight in the eye. "Deal," he said, his voice steady as steel. Now that caught her off guard. The laugh died in her throat. A flicker of surprise danced across her face. Before she could respond, he was already under the hood. No drama. No flirting. Just focused. For the first time in a long while, Claire Devereaux didn't have a response ready. She stood there in silence, watching the strange, silent man tinker with her broken Bentley, her joke still hanging in the air like a spark that might just start a fire. And deep down, something told her. This wasn't going to be just another pit stop. His name was Marcus. No flashy credentials. No Ivy League degree. No viral videos or motivational speeches. Just a quiet man in a faded blue jumpsuit who understood engines like musicians understand rhythm, not just with knowledge, but with feeling. While most people heard a broken car, Marcus heard a story. Every click, every rattle, every hiss, they spoke to him in a language few others could comprehend. Claire Devereaux, meanwhile, sat cross-legged on a worn bench near the garage wall, scrolling through emails and messages on her phone. Her investors were already calling. Her assistant had texted 3 times. She was missing her meeting, losing time, and somehow, she couldn't take her eyes off the man under her Bentley's hood. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't sweating. And he wasn't asking anyone for help. There was something mesmerizing about how Marcus moved. Like a surgeon. Or a sculptor. Every motion was deliberate. Thoughtful. Quietly confident. Claire, used to rooms full of noise, shouting, and deadlines, found herself still. She watched him replace a belt, adjust a valve, tighten a bolt, all with the kind of focus people usually reserve for things they loved. And maybe that was it. Maybe he loved what he did. An hour passed. Then another. And finally, without warning, it happened. The Bentley came to life. Not with a struggle. Not with a stutter. But with a low, powerful purr, smooth and confident, like the day it rolled off the factory floor. The entire garage paused. Marcus stepped back, wiping his hands with a clean rag. His expression didn't change. No wide grin. No boastful celebration. Just calm. Claire stood up, her phone forgotten. Her eyes wide. "You actually fixed it." Marcus turned toward her, meeting her gaze directly for the first time since they met. "A deal's a deal," he said, voice low and steady. For a moment, Claire didn't know what to say. Her heart thudded awkwardly in her chest. Was this real? Was he real? The world she came from, full of manipulation, games, and PR spins, rarely handed her moments like this. Clean. Honest. Straightforward. She let out a nervous laugh, brushing hair behind her ear. "I was joking, you know." The words sounded weaker than she intended. She didn't mean for them to feel like an apology, but they did. Marcus didn't blink. He just gave her a soft smile. Not smug. Not sarcastic. Just understanding. "I wasn't." 3 words. That's all he said. And somehow, those 3 words echoed louder in Claire's mind than the roar of any boardroom applause she'd ever gotten. In that moment, Claire saw something in Marcus that she didn't even know she'd been searching for. He wasn't trying to win her over. He didn't want attention. He just did what he said he would do. And that was rare, in business, in relationships, in life. She looked at the Bentley, now humming like a song, and then back at the man who brought it back to life. Suddenly, the joke she had tossed so casually, the playful dare, the sarcasm, didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like the start of something real. And for the first time in years, Claire didn't feel like a CEO making a deal. She felt like a woman, quietly curious about the man who fixed what she thought was beyond repair. Days passed. Then a week. And yet, Claire Devereaux couldn't stop thinking about him. Not just because Marcus fixed her car. Not just because he turned a sarcastic comment into a quiet challenge and won. But because of something far more unusual, he didn't try to impress her. That alone made him unforgettable. In Claire's world, everyone wanted something. Investors wanted stakes. Partners wanted leverage. Men she dated wanted her image, her connections, or her spotlight. It had been years since someone looked at her, really looked, and didn't try to take anything in return. But Marcus didn't flinch in her presence. He didn't flirt, didn't brag, didn't act like her money mattered. He just was. And that kind of peace? That kind of honesty? It lingered longer than any charm ever had. So one afternoon, without telling anyone, not even her assistant, Claire took another drive out of the city. This time, in her Range Rover. A perfectly fine car with no problems whatsoever. When she pulled into the same dusty garage, Marcus looked up from under a lifted truck. His eyes met hers. No surprise. No questions. He simply nodded. Need something looked at? Claire hesitated for a split second. Thought I heard something strange in the engine. Marcus didn't question it. He just walked over, popped the hood, and got to work. Inside the shop, a radio played softly. The same young mechanic from last time waved awkwardly. A dog lounged near the entrance, tail thumping lazily on the concrete. Marcus poured her a cup of coffee from a dented silver thermos and handed it to her with the same calm confidence that fixed her Bentley. No sugar-coated greetings. No "what brings you back, beautiful?" Just coffee, a quiet smile, and the sound of a wrench turning in perfect rhythm. And Claire? She stayed longer than she meant to. An hour turned into 2. The strange sound was never mentioned again. Soon, the visits became more frequent. Once a week turned into twice. Twice became 3. Sometimes she brought a car. Sometimes she didn't. She'd sit on the same bench with that chipped paint and watch him work, sipping coffee and talking about things she didn't even share with her closest friends. They talked about childhood. About dreams. About how loud the world had become, and how rare quiet was. Claire talked about pressure, the kind of pressure that came with being the face of an empire. Always being right. Always looking perfect. Always performing. Marcus didn't interrupt her. He didn't try to fix that, either. He just listened. And somehow, that made her feel lighter. One day, she asked him, "Aren't you curious about who I am?" He looked at her, half smiling. "I already know who you are. I've seen the real part." Claire's breath caught in her throat. It hit her then, in a dusty garage far from the cameras and glass offices, that Marcus wanted nothing from her. And that's what made her want to give him everything. Her time. Her trust. Her attention. Things far more valuable than money. She had dated men with yachts, with headlines, with influence. But none of them ever looked at her like she wasn't a product to buy, but a person to understand. And so, what started as a joke over a broken engine quietly began to feel like the most honest connection she had ever known. Their bond grew quietly, beautifully, like a song only they could hear. But the world? The world had a way of turning up the volume. It started with a single photo. Just Claire and Marcus sitting outside the garage one sunny afternoon. She was in jeans and sunglasses, rare for someone usually wrapped in designer elegance. He sat beside her, sipping coffee, saying little as always. Someone snapped a picture from across the street. The next day, headlines exploded. Billionaire CEO spotted with small-town mechanic. Claire Devereaux's mystery man, real love or secret rebrand? From Bentley repairs to boardroom affairs? Claire saw the photos during her morning briefing. Her PR team panicked. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in, not about her company's next product launch, not about her quarterly goals, but about him. Is it serious? He's not exactly polished. Are you doing this to soften your image? The most cutting comments came from people she once trusted. Friends. Colleagues. Even other CEOs. You're Claire Devereaux. You can be with anyone. Why him? He doesn't belong in your world. He'll never understand your lifestyle. She listened quietly, nodding at the right moments. But inside, her heart grew louder with each judgmental word. Because no one, not one person, had asked her how she felt when she was around Marcus. No one asked about the peace he brought her. No one noticed how, when she sat beside him, the constant buzzing of the world, the deals, the deadlines, the decisions, just stopped. Marcus didn't read headlines. He barely checked his phone. So when the media frenzy reached his small garage, he didn't even flinch. Reporters came sniffing. Some with microphones. Some with fake smiles. Some even offering deals, reality shows, interviews, partnerships. He turned them all down. "I'm not for sale," he told one pushy producer. And neither is she. One journalist managed to catch him off guard, asking the million-dollar question. Why do you think Claire Devereaux, the most powerful woman in tech, keeps coming back to you? Marcus didn't blink. Didn't rehearse. Didn't posture. He just looked up from the engine he was working on and said softly, "Maybe she needed someone who listens, not someone who talks." That quote hit the internet like a tidal wave. In a world drowning in noise, those 8 words felt like a lifeline. Simple. True. Unpolished, just like Marcus. Suddenly, people weren't mocking the relationship. They were rooting for it. But not everyone. At an executive dinner later that week, a well-known investor leaned in and said, "So, Claire, when does the Mechanic Act end? Or is this your version of charity?" Claire didn't say a word. She simply placed her napkin down, stood up, and left, not because she was embarrassed of Marcus, but because she was finally proud of herself for not listening to people who never really saw her. He saw her. Not the CEO. Not the brand. Not the headline. Just Claire. And while the world continued to question him, judge him, underestimate him, she knew the truth. It was his quiet that silenced her chaos. And his simplicity that revealed her worth. A full year passed since that Bentley broke down. Since a sarcastic joke turned into a quiet commitment. Since Claire met a man who didn't fit into her world, but somehow made it feel whole. The relationship wasn't always easy. There were awkward dinners, tabloid noise, and moments where their differences felt undeniable. But through it all, Marcus stayed the same, calm, grounded, and unbothered by the storms of her world. And Claire? She changed. Not in a way that made her smaller or softer, but in a way that made her more real. She laughed more. Slept better. Spoke slower. And for the first time in years, she found herself wanting less of everything, less pressure, less noise, less pretending. One evening, as summer faded into fall, she stood quietly outside the garage, watching Marcus close up shop. The same dusty garage. The same warm coffee smell. The same man who never once asked her to be anyone but herself. In her hand was a small velvet box. Marcus looked up, surprised to see her out of the car. "Car trouble?" Claire shook her head, a nervous smile tugging at her lips. "Nope. Just something I need to say." She walked up to him and held out the box. He didn't open it. He looked at her first, patient as always. "I made a joke once," she began, her voice soft, "that if you fixed my engine, I'd marry you." He smirked lightly. "I remember." Claire opened the box herself. Inside was a simple silver ring, no diamonds, no branding, just elegant, clean, and engraved with 2 words. "You did." Marcus looked at it for a long moment. Then back at her. She took a breath, then said the words that had been building inside her for months. "You didn't just fix my car, Marcus. You fixed me. You showed me what peace feels like. What real honesty sounds like. You reminded me that love doesn't need to shout, it just needs to show up. So this time, I'm not joking. Will you marry me?" There was no dramatic gasp. No background music. No flash mob with violins. Just the 2 of them. A garage. A memory. And a promise. Marcus reached for her hand, gently closed the box, and held her gaze. "Deal," he said, the same word he'd used the first time they met. Only this time, it wasn't about fixing an engine. It was about building a life. They didn't throw $1 million wedding. No luxury venue. No designer guest list. Just a ceremony behind the garage, fairy lights strung between tool racks, the hum of old engines in the background, and vows spoken with calm hearts. And as they exchanged rings, the world that once mocked their story finally saw what Claire had known all along. He didn't belong in her world. He belonged in her life. Sometimes, all it takes is one broken engine. One quiet man. And one unexpected promise to change everything. What started as a joke became a bond no one saw coming. Because real love doesn't always come loud. Sometimes, it arrives with a wrench in hand, a steady heart, and a simple word like deal. Sparkles, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Speech balloons, share your thoughts in the comments, we read every one. Bell, and if you love true, inspiring stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss what's next. Until next time, stay kind, stay humble, and remember, sometimes love shows up where you least expect it.